Chapter 64:33. Charlie's joking question made Rhea a little stunned for a moment. She saw that although Charlie was a stranger, she could tell from his clothes that he was the cavalry guard. Besides, she had been in charge here, and it was impossible for other people to sneak in. So, the main reason for her surprise was that how could a mere cavalry guard have the courage to talk to her like that? Feeling that she was being bullied, Rhea looked at Charlie with anger and coldness in her eyes. Then, she immediately used her spiritual energy to move her long sword, and the sword tip rushed straight to Charlie's neck. In Rhea's eyes, Charlie was already dead. She looked at him silently and said lightly, "You are too high to die under my sword." Charlie smiled. Confidence is a good thing, but being too confident will backfire. As he said, he saw the sword tip coming straight at him, and he was not panicked at all. The long sword is driven by spiritual energy, which is almost invincible to ordinary warriors. But to Charlie, this kind of spiritual energy is almost no threat. When Rhea was waiting for him to bleed on the spot a few meters away, he suddenly stepped towards the sword and walked into the room. When he stepped over the door frame and entered the room, the long sword had already flown in front of him, and the sword tip was shining with a pale light, unstoppable. Charlie showed no fear, and the spiritual energy that had been restrained suddenly surged to his right arm. The surging spiritual energy was no longer blocked, and the powerful aura made Rhea's face instantly become extremely horrified. She could never have imagined that a mere cavalry guard could have such a powerful strength. If her own spiritual energy was a gurgling stream, then the spiritual energy released by Charlie was like a surging river. At this moment, she immediately understood that this person was definitely not a cavalry guard. At this moment, there was a crisp sound in the air, and her slender silver sword was easily caught in Charlie's hand. The sword seemed to be struggling, and the sword body trembled violently. But even so, it could not break free from Charlie's hand. And even Charlie's wrist could not tremble. Charlie easily grasped Rhea's sword in his right hand, and closed the door with his left hand. Then he strode towards her who was standing there, and asked with a smile, "Little girl, what killer moves do you have next? Did Victoria teach you the skills of opening the Niwen Palace?" You? Rhea has only been enlightened for 2 years. She has not even had the opportunity to meet Victoria. Naturally, she has no chance to be taught the so-called self-destruction skill of opening the Niwen Palace by Victoria. What terrified her was that the man in front of her was not much older than her, but he could have such a terrifying strength. What made her even more unbelievable was that the other party dared to call the Lord by her name. This was an absolute capital crime within the den, and no one could be exempted. Even the Wu family and the direct descendants of the Wu family would never dare to be so presumptuous. She subconsciously took a step back and asked Charlie nervously, Who are you?" Charlie smiled and said, "My last name is Wade, and my given name is Charlie. Charlie Wade is my full name. You have set up a trap in Nigeria, and the person you want to catch is me." "You?" Rhea panicked all of a sudden. She stammered and asked, Why are you telling me?" Charlie smiled, looked at her and asked, "Didn't you ask me?" "I?" Rhea gasped, her eyes full of fear as she murmured, "I'm asking you don't have to be so forthright. You don't intend to keep me alive. So, that's why you're so straightforward, right?" Charlie smiled, "You're quite smart." Rhea's face turned pale with fear. She was only 24 years old and had just realized the truth for 2 years. She was the only hope of the entire family for hundreds of years. She was naturally afraid of death, but when she thought that the other party had told her everything so frankly, he must not be prepared to give her a chance to live. So she forced herself to calm down, gritted her teeth and said to Charlie, "It doesn't matter. Anyway, I want to be loyal to the Lord. If I die in your hands today, the Lord will definitely reward my family when he knows." I can say that I died for a good cause. Ouch! Charlie looked at her and smacked his lips, then smiled and said, Now that you mention it, I'm not going to kill you. If I take you and the cavalry guards here away, will Victoria think that you have betrayed her? Rhea looked at Charlie with extreme fear, and after a moment, she suddenly said with a firm expression, I am willing to die to show my determination to the Lord. After that, she immediately gathered her spiritual energy in her palm, suddenly raised her hand, and slapped her forehead with all her strength. This slap was powerful and heavy, and it could be seen that she had used all her strength. If it was really slapped on the forehead, it would definitely make her brain into a ball of paste.